I'm a 19-year-old male. In August of last year, I was driving with my sister when suddenly her face turned cold. "Gavin, your eyes are yellow," I remember her saying. I quickly pulled down the passenger's mirror, and to my horror, 2 yellow eyes radiated back at me. Fast forward, I spent a month being sick. The initial diagnosis was hepatitis A. Went back to the doctor, nothing was better, things were worse in fact. Was sent to the then to the liver transplant unit at UCSF. By this point my eyes had turned muddy orange, and my pee was the color of a mahogany tree. Anyways, the team of liver doctors at UCSF managed to save my liver. I was diagnosed with autoimmune hepatitis. Oh, and my eyes are white again. When I was 14 years old, I woke up one day with heavy stomach cramps. We called the hospital, and they told us that I probably have a stomach flu and should go to the doctor next morning. After one of the worst nights ever, vomiting and sleeping next to the toilet, we went to the doctor. I had a fever of 40°C and was aching a lot. The doctor told me I had to go to her and have it checked out because she thought my appendix was inflamed and causing the pain. We went to the and I stayed in the hospital for about 2 weeks, but they couldn't find anything. They treated me with broad-range antibiotics, and after 2 weeks I was feeling a bit better, and they told me to go home and recover. The night I got back from the hospital I went to bed and started hallucinating that I lived in a retirement home, and that pirates were coming to steal our food. So I was flailing around trying to fend off pirates when my mother came in and asked what all the fuss was about. I told her what was going on, and she looked at me like I had summoned a devil. She took my temperature and she instantly took me to the again. I had a 41°C fever. When we went back to the hospital I got treated immediately for inflammation and they did a wide range of tests again. They saw that something in my body was inflamed, but they couldn't find it. I stayed in the hospital for about 2 more weeks when they finally found what was going on. My appendix was inflamed and burst the night I was having the hallucinations, but on all the scans they couldn't see my appendix. The doctor told me that if I came in 2 days later I would have died because of the pus flowing in my body. Apparently there is a 1% chance of all the appendix cases that the appendix is so stretched out that they couldn't see it on the scans, or that the area was so inflamed they didn't see it. So after staying on antibiotics for about 2 more weeks they finally removed my appendix and all the pain was gone. I stayed in the hospital for over 4 weeks just because of my appendix and my bad luck on being that 1%. How I met my wife. I'm from the Netherlands, she is from the US. We met in Israel. It was my first weekend in Israel, decided to go on a pub crawl to meet some people and have fun. As I'm buying the ticket my now wife walks up to the counter to also buy a ticket. The girl working there introduces us, we hit it off the first night, but I'm leaving in 2 days to stay with friends of friends in the middle of the desert for 3 months 2 days. After I leave I lose my phone, don't have any way to get back in touch with her. I had little money and could stay/work with the people in the desert. But I kept thinking about her, so after a week I say I'm leaving. Take the next bus, goes 3 times a week, at 5 AM, and then a train to Tel Aviv. I had no idea how to find her, where to stay, and very little money. I email a couple hostels to find a work/stay agreement. Those jobs are very popular and usually planned months in advance. I get an email back, when I arrive in Tel Aviv, I can come in for an interview because they have a spot. This is already ridiculously lucky. Right after the interview and dropping of my belongings, I went back to the first hostel to see if they would give me information. They wouldn't give me anything. Now I'm at a loss. Tel Aviv is a city of more than 500,000 people. I don't know anyone and have little more than the clothes on my back. Kind of defeated I start wandering around/exploring the city. After a couple hours I get hungry and decide to treat myself to a restaurant. I'm well out of the tourist area and find a place that's almost empty and rather cheap. I sit down, order a drink and something to eat. As I get my food, I see my now wife walking past the restaurant. She sees me, I see her. I'm literally dumbstruck and just kind of grin and wave. Remember how I lost my phone? She didn't know that and just thought I ignored her. She waves and keeps walking. I throw like 200 shekels, way too much, in the table and sprint after her, explained, and the rest is history. No sure about the odds on this one, but I survived a non-survivable plane crash. I was on an old PO2, famous for being very safe and uncrashable, on a tour of the desert in western China. When I was like 7, my father's friend who hosted me and piloted the plane didn't survive, but somehow I got out with a concussion and apparently passed out for almost a day in the middle of the desert, in the wreckage of the crash, 50 kilometers from the town/airport. On the edge of the desert. The people who found me were some tree planters. They plant greens in the desert to protect towns from sandstorm. A lot of people live in these desert towns in China do this. Found me on their way picking up a shipment, and the only reason they looked was BC they were making a bet on how fast the egg would cook in the sand, and went off the road to test. Edit. First thing first, according to legends, 15 minutes. I never tested it though. So, according to my dads, the theory that I might have lived was because the plane was mostly made out of fabrics and wood. So when the plane crashed, the front half collapsed and took the majority of the impact. Though I got knocked out, I was probably covered under the wreckage and in the shades. It cooled me off enough to survive for a day or so. I slept wrong one night and pinched a nerve in my neck so severely I lost the right side of my body. It just went silent, like it wasn't there for months. I woke up in the worst pain I've ever experienced and couldn't talk, move or do anything. The ear doctor thought I was having a stroke. My doctor had never seen a case as severe as mine, and it was purely a freak accident. Recovery took months, but I have use of my leg and hand again, with some numbness. Other than pain and spasms, I'm mostly back to normal. Had 11 centimeters benign tumors growing in my spine, resulting in gradual paralysis from my chest down. They had no idea how the tumors formed. Surgery took 11 hours, when they thought it would take 4, because the tumors were so complexly woven throughout my spine. I now have pretty much half a spine in chronic pain. But I'd take that over losing my life from paralysis and being unable to breathe. Edit. Wow, thank you for all the support. I didn't realize this was going to blow up as much as it did. If anyone has specific questions and wants to message me, feel free, I'm at your service. Thanks again for all the support and love, it made my day. When I was a teenager I had just started working at the local Sears Auto Center Express Lube shop, and on day 1 did a quick orientation in my first oil change. The manager walked away when he felt I was good to go, and the oil change went well. Fast forward a few days later, my manager asked me to come into his office and he explained that the oil filter I had used had one huge flaw. I didn't know what that was, and it turned out the filter was pressed on backwards into the filter can, and it wouldn't allow oil to flow in, and it damaged the motor. They had to purchase a new motor for the person, and I still kept my job. He said it was a 1 in a million chance that would have happened, and it did on my first oil change. I was struck by lightning while talking on a landline. This was in the early 90s. Lightning struck the telephone line and traveled through the handset to my ear. My parents drove me to the ER. I couldn't talk very well. My brain knew what I wanted to say, but my mouth didn't want to say it. I had a terrible stutter. My doctor told me that I had had a dose of good, old-fashioned electroshock therapy. My speech was normal the next day, but I get a terrible headache whenever a thunderstorm comes through. Edit. AutoCucumber Edit 2, thank you for the gold. I have an unknown type of autosomal dominant intranuclear myopathy. My type of it is so rare that they haven't even seen it before. Getting diagnosed was a multi-year struggle. They pretty much had to rule out everything else. It doesn't feel great to be in this club by myself. Countless blood draws, MRIs, CAT scans and a Bayesian genetic test. So far, it looks like my father and I are the only ones with it. Yay. Edit. Thank you guys for all the kind messages and support. I really do appreciate it. If anyone is going through the struggle of getting a diagnosis, message me. I can't help with the diagnosis, but I can help with the feelings. Second edit, as a researcher has pointed out, this isn't really rare. Just a type that hasn't really been seen in the population yet. Meaning there is certainly more people out there, just not tested or diagnosed yet. In the future, I'll probably be 1 in 50,000 to 1 in 100,000. Sorry to make everyone think I was 1 in a million. I was born 1 pound and 6 ounces in 1998. Doctor said I had like a 15% of surviving or something like that. They also said that, if I did survive I would have been a vegetable. So months pass. Funny thing was I came out of the hospital on the day I was due, came out in February, left the hospital in June, while I'm still forming as a baby and it's 20 years later, and I'm alive and healthy. I can walk, talk and all the normal things. Only thing really wrong with me is my right eye is hanging on a thread cause of reasons, and I'm socially autistic. I guess that's 1 in 1 million.